Hi guys, welcome back to another comprehensive color blending 2 class. This week it's going to be a little bit different. I said at the beginning there will be weeks that I will do lesson. Well, this is one of those weeks where I'm going to do a lesson. And if you sit and you listen to what I'm going to say, you will probably gain as much information today than you will in 5 lessons, because what I'm going to do today, well, let me start from the beginning. During the week, I was sent a picture. This came from one of the Kincaid books. I think it's Posh, Thomas Kincaid. Now, Thomas Kincaid was a famous painter. He died in like 2012. He was a famous painter, and he did a lot of work with Disney. He did paintings, although in his lifetime he did do mixed media and pencils and everything, but it's his paintings that he's famous for. And they have like a ethereal softness to them. Now, I don't know if it's the printing that's enhancing that or his actual paintings, but his paintings were often of very serene country, as you see in this book, but that's what he liked to paint. Very comforting, slow, summery, country paintings, landscapes. So this was a perfect example of it. Now, during the week, I got sent this picture, and the woman who sent it to me said to me, "What can I do to fix this disaster?" And I took a look at it, and I was like, well, first of all, it's not a disaster by a long shot. Now, some of you may look at it and say, well, it's a beginner. Yes, it's a beginner. But I'm going to start off with what I loved about this picture. She's new. She had an excellent command of or understanding of the colors in the picture. She came very darn close to the colors that were in the original painting. Now, if you know anything about the Kincaid books, one side of the page they give you the painting, and then they give you a coloring book rendition on the other side. It's a great concept, but nobody ever finishes it. I mean, I remember when I did finish the one page out of the book that I did do, I remember everybody in that thread or in my comments section was just amazed that they actually saw somebody that finished a picture out of the book. The reason why people get discouraged is, first of all, you're looking at a painting. Remember at the beginning of this, I made the analogy of a tuba and a flute are musical instruments, but the tuba is never going to be a flute, and a flute is never going to be a tuba. Well, colored pencils are never going to be paint. You're not going to get the same effects and the same look in colored pencils, and that's why it's a little bit disheartening to people when they start doing this and it's so easy. It's not easy. It's actually very difficult because paint mixes differently than pencils. So I commend her and for finishing, first of all, the page, and for second of all, going at it with such a good eye and being new. Well, she made a lot of newbie mistakes that we're going to correct. And by correcting her, maybe you could see yourself in her art, which has a lot to do with what I've been teaching you in the comprehensive color blending. And that's why I got off the flower pages and I wanted to specifically look at this picture because she did a lot of really right things needed to be addressed. And she did some things that she can make better. So we're going to take a look at this picture and examine it under a microscope. And I mean really examine it. So let's start from the beginning. And I'm going to start in the lower corner where the pointer is at that red bush, the red and green. Now, if you look over on her side of the page, you could see that she did not fill in the red at all. There's a lot of white on the page. And what do I tell everybody? Layers, layers, layers. So the fact that we could see white in her page automatically says this page is not done. What's done about this page is the first layer, basically. And a lot of it she didn't even have first layer on. So we didn't even get that far. So it's not a disaster, it's underdone. What I would do, well, first of all, I would get in there and really go in where the white spots are. But if you take a look over on the other side in the bush, you could see where I'm pointing. It's actually darker than this side. And that is two different, remember we said analogous color blending? That is one hue and one hue darker. So you either use two pencils or you can go in with a very light black or a dark gray, one or the other, to darken it up. So one side is going to be the saturated and the other side is going to be the toned. If you look at the grass, she did a very good attempt at doing the subtle hues in the grass. That's one way of doing it, but it's not the only way. And the way I would tackle this picture is to look at the color groups. Now, if you look over on the Kincaid picture, you could see there are different splotches of color. Those also are your analogous color groups. Now, it becomes analogous, so you have the same exact object, but the light is hitting it in different places. Now, we learned that in Comprehensive Color Blending 1 when we did lighting. So we're going to take the hue, and I would say this one, okay? And we're going to call that middle, just like I'm doing with the flowers. That's your middle color. Now you have to go up and you have to go down. And with the greens, it's usually very easy to find a green that is darker and a green and a lighter green. But I would stick with that hue. Go to your color wheel, find this is on the yellower side of green, and just look on the color wheel where your colors are going to go. Grab up those pencils, and what you should do is a bottom layer. That's really that middle color. Now, even though there are lights and darks on this page, on the grass, by choosing the mid-tone color, you can go with a little bit of yellow. You can go to the lighter side, and you can go to the darker side. But as long as you start on that middle hue, you have that room to go up and down. Now, there are very distinctive light areas on the Kincaid. So I would do a very light layer of your mid-tone. Get that established. Then go to the areas that are light and get your highlight in. Those are pretty light, and you should be able to get to match it with a lighter color. And you also can go to white and lighten it up using white, desaturating the color. Then you can go in with the darker, and in the areas that you see where I'm pointing that are darker, go in with your darker tone. By the time you're finished putting in your lights, your middles, and your darks, then you can come back and work on the subtle details, the individual pieces of grass. Now, the way she did it was okay. You can do that. I do that with fur. But if I was going to do a landscaping where I was looking into the distance, I wouldn't necessarily see every blade of grass. Where if you were doing a animal portrait, usually the animal is up close and you're looking at, the details in the animal. Like the dog in this case in the picture where I'm pointing. You don't do the individual hairs on that dog, although I think she attempted it. If you look over on the painting, there is no individual hairs done. There's 3 tones. You've got a darker tone. The ear is a little bit darker, so the dog has darker fur on the ears. Of course, the tiny little nose. And then a large highlight from the sun coming down onto its body. I wouldn't even have colored that part in with the darker pencil. I would have left it at the lightest that I could have possibly left it. She went a little bit flat on the dog. If she had gotten that highlight in just right at the beginning, she would have gotten those 2-tone colors. But on the grass, Because the grass is in the distance, you're not concentrating so much on each individual strand of grass. You're really looking at tiny clumps that make up larger areas. So while she did a good job, it still ran a little bit flat because in between those individual blades of grass, she missed a lot of coloring space. Now, there are areas where I'm pointing on both pictures where there is a dirt path. And she did a good job of getting her darker tones in. I think she went a little bit, well, she kind of, okay, where I'm pointing on her picture, the fact that she went so dark at the edge over here makes it look like it's raised up and it's higher when it needs to be lower. And I know on the picture you go in with the dark on the edges because you want it to go in. The fact that you went to the outer edge, and you see where I'm pointing, like it went around the outer edge and then light, that's exactly how you would do a box top. So that needs to be blended into to make it look flat. It's too cut. So it looks raised. So that's a good effect if you wanted that effect, but really on the path, it's cut slightly below the grass. Now you can get it to look like it's below the grass by bringing the individual blades right up to the edge. On hers, like where I'm pointing, it's very dark. On Kincaid's, you could see where the grass is growing into the hole, and that's what I would like it to see more. And not so smooth because the dirt in the grass is not smooth. Now I'm going to skip over onto the water. I love the way she differentiated her water, but she went a little bit too blue. If she had lightened it up and not been so stark, it wouldn't have been like rapids. And where she did the purple, where I'm pointing right here, she did a little bit of purple. I don't think she recognized the fact that that's not purple. That's actually a reflection of the barn. I guess the covered. What is that? The covered bridge. So if you look where the light on Kincaid's painting is, that's where the yellow is. And she kind of skipped the whole entire reflection. There's time to go back to do it because she did base. You can get those colors in there. But it's going to be that whole thing changes color because of the reflection of the bridge. And you can almost see the details in it, in the water, where the bridge changes colors. He changed his hues. Now on the barn, I keep calling it a barn, on the bridge, it went flat because the colors in Kincaid's were much brighter. Now you did a good effort in trying to get the two-tone, but it is much lighter. Now how do you get lighter? Just like in the flowers, if you want something to look lighter, around it you do darker. Remember that seesaw effect we learned about last week? That is how you do it. So you can go in with a darker pencil, darken up the areas on the bridge, and suddenly all those lighter areas are going to turn lighter and it's going to come to life. It's going to be three-dimensional. The same thing to the roof. Darken up the areas on the roof will make the lighter areas look light. Like you have that undertone done. Now play with the lights. And the same thing in the tree. Look where the sun has gone. Now you made an effort into it. And that looks good. But there is a little bit more yellow. If you look on his picture, that's a brighter color. That's a standing out and popping color. I don't really know what pencils you have, or I would suggest a color. But I could see some beiges in there. I could see some yellows. Don't go as bright as lemon yellow. Stick to your tanner colors, but your brightest tans, and which I know is not exactly the Chinese budget sets. And for somebody who I know, I'm doing one of those Chinese budget sets. They don't have those colors. You can even go on the path. Now, to get back to this, on the path, it's the same thing. Darken up as the picture gets darker. Now, you went very bright on the background where the greens were. I'd like to see a little bit darker in there, because all of a sudden you've got this where I'm pointing. You've got this really light area, but if you look at the picture, it's not that bright. The sun does not shine over there that brightly. The same thing in the window. You go a little bit darker, it's going to make that middle, actually the middle where you left the area open, and it's a very light green, is the exact color you need. Just darken up the rest of it, and that's going to pop. The wood that goes up and down where I'm pointing in there is darker. It's you went red. I don't know why you went red. I don't really see red in the picture because it's it's dark. So you've got shadow in there, so you wouldn't necessarily see so much bright color coming from this direction. If you look on the outside of the bridge, it's just the same wood, so you wouldn't have this change in color. That looks more like stained glass. The front of the building, the bridge, it's the same thing. Go darker where the picture is darker. What a lot of people are afraid of is they do what they think and not what they see. Color what's there. If it's dark, make it darker. And I know, oh, you use all these bright colors, and all of a sudden I'm saying, go darker. When you do that, you bring the picture to life. So if you do that, you're going to get a much more shadowed effect. It's going to change the whole feel of the picture. Now, I think you did a very good job on the sky. You did a good match, especially in this corner. You did almost a perfect match. I would leave that alone. That's exactly what you want to see a little bit. It's not a blue sky. It's more like a hazy, whitish, lots of cloud cover, but it's a sunny day. Okay? It's definitely not a Las Vegas sky, because our skies are bright blue all the time, every day, day after day. That's all we have is sunshine and bright blue skies. So I would love to see a day like this, that haze. And get into those trees, darken it up. Now, if you look on the tree, it's in the shadow. So there's not as much detail as what you put on the tree. Go darker with that, except for those light areas, and you're going to get much more drama. And the same thing with the rocks, okay, where I'm pointing, in the rock area. That has to be much darker and more defined. And I see where you put in a little bit of red. There is a tinge of red in there. I could see that. It's a reflection off of something, but you went a little bit too pinkish red. It's gotta be toned down. If you leave this color and just get in your darker tones, you're gonna do much. It'll look a lot closer to what it is. So again, we're looking at the subtle tones of shadow, which is what this entire course is to get the details and when to include the details. This is a picture where there's, believe it or not, there's not as much detail. That was kind of his thing. He did subtle, very, very subtle details, which I don't think you're going to be able to achieve at the point that you are at in your artistic journey. You're beginning, you're new, it's early. So I hope that helps, and I hope that helps with a lot of people, because it's really not going to make a difference what picture you're going to use. So this week, let's take a look at the pictures. What I want you to do. I want you to look at your pictures. Now, I've seen a lot of them. I want you to take another look. Now that you've had a week and some time away from it, go back and recheck your picture and make sure you got in those really subtle shadows. And I will see you in our next video. Take care. Bye-bye.